My question is, like, how do you guys, or have you dealt with this? And then how do you deal with people that get like deep into conspiracy theories? And it seems to be more prevalent on the right than the left. And so like, I'm interested to know like what everybody else deals with and like how you deal with that.
I think that there is a study. I think Relevant came out with a study that said like younger evangelicals are more prone to conspiracy theories than any other people group. So it's not. I mean, I do agree. It's more like conservative leaning, but it's like specifically even like our demographic, like younger, like millennial evangelicals for whatever reason. I'll say this: in Bible college, there was a week. I specifically remember this. Jeff, you remember John Ramsey? He was my roommate. He was my roommate at the time.
John's a regular listener. What's up, John?
yeah, he is. Sure. I remember he found it for me or I found that documentary on YouTube called Loose Change, which is all about like 9/11 conspiracies or whatever. And that Monday started a whole week where me and him didn't go to class. We just watched YouTube videos. We closed our window and we like everything was on the table. 9/11, moon landing, JFK, MLK, nothing is real. I mean, we were freaking out. And I remember because the professor like came up to us like it was like, where have you been? And it was like, we can't trust anything right now. And I remember it was like Thursday or Friday that week. Literally, we spent 5 days just only leaving to eat and then coming back and watching YouTube videos. And I remember thinking to myself, even if all of this is true, like all of the conspiracies are true, Jesus is still king. And it just proves that we live in a depraved world. Like that's the only thing it proves if these conspiracies are true. With that being said, I don't know if half those conspiracies are true. But I do find in my own church, there's a handful of people, that like are, Tom Hanks posted something about like, hey, you should wear a mask. And people are like, what does he have to talk about? He's eating babies or something. And it's like, yikes. Like, how do we get here? And I just think like there are a lot of like conspiracies that are infiltrating. And for those situations, I actually have no idea how to handle that because I know those same people are not going to take the vaccine when the COVID vaccine comes out, right? And like
the thing about them is like that people, when somebody starts going down that road, they like paint themselves into a corner where anything you say to refute them is part of the conspiracy. So it's like it's almost like there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, we dealt with this in our congregation about a month ago, and when a lot of the COVID conspiracies were coming out, and I just saw my Facebook feed flooded with conspiracy. Yep, that was it. It was the pandemic video, and even one of our staff members shared it. And in response, a pastor buddy of mine up here or down here, he wrote a really good blog article that I happened to share minutes after one of our staff members posted the pandemic video. And then I got a text message within 15 minutes. Did you share that blog because you disagreed with my Facebook post? And I was like, that may have been a coincidence, but it was yours and many others. And that's the reason I shared that blog article. So it got really dicey really fast.
Yeah.
I think part of it is we don't know enough about the truth to be able to have a good informed opinion either way. I mean, a super real thing that happened over here is a buddy of mine, his mother-in-law went to get tested for COVID a couple weeks ago. And she walked in, did the nose swab thing. Or no, she didn't do the nose swab. She walked in and all she did was fill out the paperwork. And they said it's going to be like an hour and a half before we can get to you. So she sat there and she was finally like, yo, I'll just go self-quarantine for 2 weeks. I'm not sitting here an hour and a half and definitely going to get it, So she goes home, never gets tested. They call her 3 days later and tell her she's positive for COVID. That's a true, so those are the kind of stories like that are true that don't help the narrative,
No,
so like,
and
help. That the kindling is there. That's a fire, man. It just lights it. So now you're putting out all these fires because that's a real situation. And I think like just having an abundance of just non-anxiety, that's the most practical advice that's been given to me by one of my mentors is no matter what they throw at you, don't be surprised and have non-anxiety and lean into, we don't know, so yeah.
But my thing though is like where I wrestle with this is how do we pastor these people, right? Like how do we care for them? Because what happens is if you latch onto one conspiracy, it's easy to trickle down to like a ton of conspiracies, and like what you said, Jeff, like you can paint yourself in a corner where like, oh, the reason why you disagree with me is because you're brainwashed or you're believing the
I'm the
mainstream
only one
media.
that's woke, y'all.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's
Yeah.
like that's like the same as the person who is like in a different way. It's the person who always finds themselves as the victim, and so when anyone disagrees with them, they're just like, "Oh, I'm just a victim here," and you can never win that argument. And I guess like I'll be the first one to say like, Delmar, your story, like even in that week of super conspiracy theory like week with John Ramsey and Bible College, there's some stuff to this day I'm like, yeah, it doesn't add up. Like I don't get it, but my faith supersedes any kind of conspiracy. So therefore, like, I'm not going to sweat QAnon, Pizzagate, or whatever is happening because ultimately Jesus is still king. The truth in scripture still supersedes all these conspiracies. But some of these conspiracies are also tied to their faith, like flat earth stuff. Like they tie it to, the King James Bible and the firmament. And I'm like, I don't know how to help you right now if we can't like agree with science.
I would say that like part of it for me, my mind always tends to go back to like things in church history. So this is honestly like a soft form of Gnosticism, because what's essentially happening is people are saying, I don't want to deal with the reality of the world, and I want to feel like I'm in control. And so if I find out the secret knowledge that nobody else has, then I feel like I'm a little bit more in control. And I mean, I think that's at the bottom of what, that's the root of like what people are trying to do. And I mean, you said like, how do you pastor people? It's just like you said, a reminder to people that like, yeah, Jesus is king. He's going to establish his kingdom forever. And everything that has been done in the dark will be brought to light. So like, if there are these conspiracies happening, it's going to come out one day.
And there's always conspiracies, or conspiracies, cover-ups. You look at Snowden, which wasn't that long ago. But at the same time, it's, hey, everybody, go inside for 3 months. You're not allowed to leave. You're not allowed to socially interact with any other humans, and then act rationally. So have your whole life stripped away from you, and then come out and act normal. And that's kind of what we're dealing with right now.
I before we go into another clergy cliff, I do want to ask this one question because I do love this part of the conversation. If there's one conspiracy that you do give a little credence to, what is it? And I'll just say this one: I don't believe in this, but I laugh every time because I just bought a bird feeder that pigeons are by the government to surveillance us, and the argument is, have you ever seen a baby pigeon? And I'm like, I haven't. Like, I've never seen a baby pigeon before. And so maybe they're robots that are surveilling us. But what is one conspiracy that's like, I don't believe in conspiracy theories, but where's the smoking gun? If you do have one.
I mean, I know we're going to talk about masks in a little bit. So, I mean, that's one of them that I'm like, I don't think it's like a global cabal of leaders making us wear masks. But, I mean, of course there's more stuff going on behind the scenes that you don't know about.
Yeah.
I mean, I said this last time, but like I've been involved in the foster care system, and like there's stuff in the courtroom that like attorneys are whispering stuff to each other that they don't tell you about, and like stuff's going on behind the scenes. So is that happening at a world political level? I mean, of course.
I think the one that I hear, and you now, Frank, disclaimer: you said I'm not all bought into it, so don't put me in that box. But that whole moon thing, guys. The moon thing,
the blood moons.
Like I no, like the fact we went to the
moon landing.
Oh, the moon landing,
like the actual landing. And so like I was genuinely seeking, and like I find it's hard to. And this is the thing: when you're even a little bit on the conspiracy side, and you try to engage someone who's on the quote truth side, sometimes that's a hard. Like a while back, it was on my it was trending on YouTube. Ben Shapiro did a praising the moon landing, like a whole deal. It was nicely done. But I went into the comments and I was like, but did we though? That wasn't wise. That was not the wise thing to do. But yeah, so I think, yeah. And then you go to bed, you're like, man, am I just crazy? But because people don't want to dialogue with you about it, because this is the standard of truth. And it's like, well, not everybody's there in the same way. And I think that we should be able to have conversations about the conspiracy stuff and not like go to the worst case scenario, you know?
The first spaceship that went to the moon has the same technology as like a calculator. So like,
Just saying.
but hey, if they made it, that's super. That's more than I can do. Also, at the end of the day, I'm not an astronaut. I don't know. I took one math class in Bible college. What do I know about anything? All right.
Now, SpaceX will get us there, fellas. I am confident in that. Elon Musk is going to get us there.
I mean, if he couldn't get the windows on his truck right, I don't know.
Oh, ouch.
That's a conspiracy too. He did it on purpose to go viral.
Do you all remember and again, this is not where I am, but I just am fascinated by it, by the people that go down this. Do you remember the big tornado in Joplin, Missouri in like 2011? There are people that are convinced, there's no way this tornado could have been this strong, been this devastating. This was a government, this is a military experiment gone wrong that they are blaming on a tornado. And there are documentaries and there are people that will swear to this, that, and the other. And how do you have an entire city witness something and then people are like, nope, that's not what happened? It just blows my mind.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure mine's not a conspiracy at all because it's just real. Whenever my wife and I are talking and we just briefly mention a product whatsoever, the next time I'm on Instagram, the ads on my stories are for the product that we mentioned every single time. So I'm like, is this a conspiracy or is this just real? My devices are always listening. And I just accepted
products
it.
too.
So random.
I have 5 Google Homes.
Bro,
so
you are trying to
sure,
get like surveilled.
Yeah, I have 2 smoke alarm nests. I have the doorbell.
Frank, we said in the last episode that pastors shouldn't be flexing, and now you're like, I've got 5 Google Homes.
5 Google Homes. Well, we do have 7 Alexas because it's our home intercom system, so every room of the house has one.
Guilty.
And I'm pretty sure I got 2 Google Homes for free because of Spotify.
I got those too.
But Timothy, let's hear your clergy cliff note because I feel like it has something to do with kind of what we've been talking about.
It does, and it's very relevant to even what's happening today amongst most of our churches, especially down here in Florida. The Gospel Coalition recently put out an article titled 4 Reasons to Wear a Mask, Even If You Hate It. We know that the debate is hot, that even just wearing a mask has now been politicized, which is what it is. It's just the world that we live in. But the argument here from this article is that, hey, Christians, do we want to be seen as reckless virus super spreaders who want to put their own freedoms? We want to gather in person as soon as possible. We don't feel like wearing masks unless it's absolutely mandated. Do we want to put that ahead of the health of the larger community? Or do we want them to look at Christians as servants to all, willing to forego our freedoms out of Christ-like neighborly love? So it hit me well because last week we just put out a blast to our congregation. Hey, we need you to wear masks starting on Sunday. This is what our county is recommending, and we're going to follow those guidelines. So it's out of neighborly love. It's out of respect to authorities. It's out of honoring the weak. And all these have scripture to back them up. And it's out of this for the sake of, we don't need to flaunt our freedom when many times Paul willingly gave up his freedom for the sake of others. So this is kind of where we find ourselves. So where are you guys at here? Have you been dealing with this issue in your churches? Is this just Florida or is this nationwide?
Well, I'm 2 minutes down the road from you, so I don't think that really counts. But our statement has been, just because you have the right does not make it right. And as followers of Christ, we are not beholden to any amendment, but we are beholden to the great commandment, and that is to love the Lord your God and to love your neighbor as yourself. So shut up and put your mask on, comma, idiot.
That's Andrew's pastoral style, by the way, comma, idiot.
It's funny. I remember when I was in my last church in Arkansas, which, by the way, that church, I'm almost certain some of the people would be like, I'm never going to wear a mask or whatever. But I remember we lived in a dry county. It's one of the few states that have counties that you can't buy alcohol in. And there was a whole sermon about how drinking is bad. I remember hearing this. But there was one quote he said that I thought was really good. He said, love limits liberty. And he said that love limits liberty in the sense that, like, because we can love others we don't have to have all of our rights. We can lay down our rights and lay down our liberties for the sake of others. And it's ironic thinking that about, like, I'm sure masks are like such a big deal down there, but I mean, I was kind of apathetic about the mask, and my thought was like, as long as I keep my distance and don't like breathe in someone's spit, maybe I'll be okay, you know. And I was fine with just kind of being kind of apathetic about masks, but then I went to Texas to speak at a thing, and no one had masks. I'm sure there's people in Texas who wear masks, but like where I was, like in the DFW airport, I looked at a sea of people with no masks, and it freaked me out. This is like the thought of just so many people in one space with no masks while there's a pandemic just kind of like startled me. And so I was like in a corner by myself with a mask on, just trying to wait till my layover to be over. And that got me thinking about my first in-person training. I made a statement where I said, hey, you don't have to wear a mask. I can't force anyone to do this, but but if you would like to, you can. And that's kind of like a statement a lot of churches have been saying. But after going to Texas, I kind of followed up with a video and I said, hey, you know, this is where I feel like wearing a mask is loving your neighbor. Wearing a mask costs you nothing. And at the most, it disfigures my beard, and I'm okay with that. And then the last thing is this: even if I'm wrong about masks, even if masks do nothing, I'd rather wear a mask and be wrong about it than not wear a mask and like actively be able to have the spread of COVID-19. And so it's kind of like that Anselm's wager, right? Where it's like, if I'm wrong, I just wasted, wearing a mask, but if you're wrong, you could kill somebody. like that's kind of like the my thought process. And what's crazy is my next meeting, only one person didn't wear a mask. And everyone was complaining, like, I hate this mask. It's annoying. It's uncomfortable. But they got it. They understood that, like, that kind of thing. I don't know if Milwaukee is a lot more gracious than other places, but like that's kind of what happened here. And that's kind of how I feel about masks. I don't know if there's a lot of science supporting one way or the other that masks really do anything, but I'd rather wear a mask and look dumb and not make that mistake than not wear a mask.
So is anybody on the other side of this? Because we had people in our congregation, when that email went out, immediately erupted. And I had to field personal phone calls as to why we made this decision. No, it was not political. Yes, I understand the idea of a slippery slope. No, this does not violate anything in Scripture. Like I had to, there was a litany of things. So if you guys had to deal with
I already had a woman, she posted a Facebook post and connected mask wearing to one day us getting the mark of the beast. I mean,
that's what I'm talking about.
Where,
absolutely.
That's where we're at. I personally have a, I know. Let that sink in, guys. The mask leads to the mark of the beast. And it's like, but when I lean into her, like as a pastor, like I need to hear that, because that's for her, that is like real. And I think for us in Sumter, there is that explosiveness because there's that, we want to do our own thing kind of vibe around here. Now for us, that got eliminated as of tomorrow because yesterday they voted everyone in the city limits has to, and in the county limits has to wear a mask if they're inside a space. So now our neighboring city, Columbia, the capital, they did the same thing. They said if you're in Columbia, you have to wear a mask except in religious institutions. So now all those churches are having to be the bad guys, because, well, we got to wear Walmart, but now you're making us wear it here and it's supposed to be optional and you're just assimilating to the government. And honestly, and I know you guys are catching it on both sides. Like, who is the one? Like, who do you listen to? And it's toting the line. And
for the record, when you say catching it, I don't want you to think that we're not catching it. I just want to.
Yeah,
I don't want people to listen.
Semantics matter. Yeah, we're catching like heat, right? Because
thank you.
Some people are pressuring
but not from
you,
a fever.
But not. Yes. Yes, and the pressure is not because of your sinuses, for clarity. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult. And I think what I'm doing, and it has really helped, is I'm being very honest with my congregants. When they came to me and they say, you don't love me because y'all aren't wearing a mask, I say, I'll be honest, I'm actually hearing that same thing on the other side. And where the tension is, at least in my area, is the people who are not wearing the mask feel like the people who are wearing the mask are judging them. And the people who are wearing the mask feel like the people who aren't wearing the mask are judging them. And I think this is where we really have to speak. To me, it's not to the issue as much through the issue. Almost what Frank was talking about earlier. We have to go straight to the gospel with it. Because if we don't take it to kingdom-mindedness, we get hung up on every single little issue. So when you park it in, hey, how do you love your neighbor? Well, should make that conversation a little bit more palatable.
Yeah, for us, we have I don't know that we've been through to the other side of the issue. Our county, so Maryland, our governor's Governor Hogan. I'm sure if you've watched the news, you've seen him on there, and I'm really impressed with his leadership. But we shut things down really fast and really hard. And when we came out of it and went into phase 1 in Maryland, Baltimore County, because we have such a high rate of community spread, we stayed in shut down for an extra 2 weeks. So there was a sense in which, like you guys down in Florida now, it kind of takes the decision out of your hand, which is kind of nice. Like I didn't have to be the one to say that. But it was interesting to watch the reactions by people when, and this is less in my church and more in the community, when President Trump came out and said that churches should meet, and if the governors didn't, do it, that he was going to override. It was interesting then to watch us as a church say, well, listen, we've been saying all along that the government can't tell us what to do. They still can't tell us what to do, and we're still not going to meet. And so that was kind of the other side of it. Now, I will say this, as a pastoral issue, I have a person in my church who has dealt with domestic violence and who has had somebody hold their hand over their mouth repeatedly. So sometimes as pastors, I think it's good to be careful to remember that a policy always is going to have exceptions to it, and that we pastor people and we don't pastor systems. So that's a sense in which you have a conversation with that one person. But also, like you said, Delmar, part of the role of a shepherd is to protect the sheep from each other sometimes. And so part of what we're doing is I'm not taking sides, but I am shepherding both sides of it and saying both of you need to think about loving the other. If you're for masks, you can't think, it's not okay for you to think that people who don't want to wear masks are just have bad judgment. And if you don't want to wear masks, it's not okay for you to think that, everybody on the other side is just giving in to some government overreach. And, in the kingdom of heaven, the pattern in the New Testament is always that the strong lays their self down for the weak. And I think in the mask debate, those who want to wear masks would be the weaker brother. And those of us who don't want to wear masks have the mandate on us to put a mask on for the sake of our weaker brother and not make a thing about it, not make a thing out of it. So what we've done practically is we're just not meeting inside. We're meeting outside. Now we're a small church, and there's literally a shady spot under a tree in front of my house because it's a parsonage. And that's where we have Sunday service. 30-ish people show up, and then there's another about that many online. And so because we're outside, we don't have to be quite as vigilant. So I can say we're strongly encouraging you to wear a mask, but there are some people who don't. And it's not as big of a deal because we're outside. And the science is showing that outside is just way safer than inside. So that's kind of how we're dealing with it. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything in this that's not a pastoral issue. All of it is.
Right. It's I wonder how long we're going to have to deal with this, because obviously this is a conversation until there isn't a vaccine for coronavirus. And then that conversation is going to come up. It's do you make you can't make a mandate that says you have to be vaccinated to come to church. You know what I'm saying? But that conversation is going to be maybe even brought up. It's people who are vaccinated judging people who aren't vaccinated, vice versa. And we're going to have to pass through those type of things. And if the mask is the mark of the beast, the microchips that Bill Gates is putting in us is for sure the mark of the beast from the vaccines created. That's sarcasm if that wasn't picked up. Hey,